beautiful paper that I sent you yesterday. Let me see what, right here. I know you have it. No, I sent it to you.
Yes,
yes.
yeah.
Good.
It's beautiful, isn't it? I am my biggest fan. No, I'm kidding you. But what happens is that I send it to you first in my note, but then originally I designed it to go into one page. And then I decided that it was too complex and so forth. But then Carolina suggested that I should send it to you as an attachment so you can have it as a one page. Yeah. And it's something that you should have it around and read it maybe 10 times a day. Or some, I'm kidding you again. But, something to really remind you that you are in a different world, because remember that we're always innocently, by the enormity of the linear consciousness that exists still within around, it's complex because we innocently goes back into the old paradigm. So you have to remind the continuously to come back to the new paradigm. So until the mind eventually it will not go there anymore because it will function inside of its own system as a whole system. And then when it functions inside of its whole system, it reflects all points of reference of unity. And all those points of reference of unity are not in a specific self-enclosed system. They are relating to every single point of reference that existed within all paradigm. So they are not just isolated within themselves. The whole system is actually the way that you can see the world and understand the world and experience the world in its totality without getting trapped as an observer, and be more and more connected as the creative nature of it, and transform it, understand it, learn, celebrate it. It's much more fun because you're partaking of the human experience at the same time that you're partaking of the universal experience at the same time. And then in the third aspect, the human experience, the universal experience, and the essential experience, which is the real you. Because remember that the real you is the one who wrote everything, who did everything, who expressed everything. So the real you gets to be now the fulfillment of all things as a human, as a divine, and as yourself as well. And to be fulfilled as yourself as well is a big, big, big deal, because you get to be inside of a completely new mind that knows everything, feels everything, understands everything, and is manifesting the new world. And the new is actually the presence of the new paradigm. It's wonderful, it's beautiful. So it's a lot, but it's absolutely beautiful. So anyway, I wanted to encourage, that's the reason I wrote this paper, a little bit for you to start engaging you in that reality. And then planning a little bit about it, what will happen after when we complete the next one. I think we have one more Zoom and maybe one more Q&A, and then we'll complete everything. So then I don't know if we're going to continue or not. But in the beginning, I said, well, no, I'm going to ask you, all of you, when we have more attendance, if they want to, and I want to continue. But inside of my own, it just came to me the last 2 days that it will be lovely to start being together and be in the new world together. Us being in a conversation or as a teaching and jumping in and out of it. And then talk about all the words and all the terms that from which we are understanding the new consciousness. So we can go a word at a time, a term at a time, and be together and explain, what does it mean, this term? What does it mean, that word in its essence? Because when the words now that they're returned back in the new consciousness, all the words that we're using in the new consciousness are essences. And what that means is that the word reflects the whole thing, every single other word inside of itself. And it's fantastic, like the word love, for example, just pick up a word. We have many ideas about love. And we can say, okay, love is really actually an essential feeling of my being as I get connected to the moment and certain experiences of my life in which I feel overwhelmed, taken by love, and at the same time feel renewed and happy and content and blah, blah, blah. We can go forever. But in unity in motion, in the totality of the consciousness, love is the main ingredient of the new consciousness, if you meant, because we always say the love is the natural momentum in which the universe is expanding into infinity. Yes. So what that means, this is just an example. So what that means that if love is the natural momentum in which the universe is expanding into infinity, it means that really what love is ascension. Is the atomic moment in which the universe is inside of the fountain of life. Yeah, so let's go back again, those three things, so it makes it simple. The love is we said the love is the natural momentum in which the universe is expanding into infinity. But before that, we said that is the main ingredient of the new consciousness, because it is the moment of existence, the moment within the fountain of life, and the moment in which everything is ascending by the grace of love. So you can see, we can just use the word of love and then we just define and everything, but we can begin to understand what does it mean, love as an essence. And then we can understand that it is the actual momentum of life, the actual momentum of the fountain, which is the energy that we are all beginning to experience and encounter and enjoy it. There is the moment of atomic existence. That moment that we're talking about, the fountain and the universe expanding into infinity, and the sensation of life, the feeling of life, is actually the atomic. And what that means is that it's happening before our awareness. So it means it's happening constantly. We are constantly showering by love, by the fountain of life. And then from then, in the traditional consciousness, it was complex because we were inside of a different paradigm. So the mind creates different experiences. But when the new consciousness, the mind, as existing inside of that place, it creates a different moment in relation to life, in relation to the experience of life, in relation to the creation of all things, and the creation in the way that you sense yourself, and the creation in which you experience every single aspect of life. So that's what being in the new consciousness means, and treating it from that perspective of love. Yes. So then remember that when we go to love, then I said, okay, love is the natural ingredient of the new ingredient. I don't know, I just created in this moment, but it's the essence of the new consciousness. Yeah. And then love is the natural momentum in which the universe is expanding into infinity. Yeah. The natural momentum in which the universe is expanding into infinity is called unity in motion. Yes, that's what unity in motion means. The natural momentum in which the universe is expanding into infinity. Yeah. Then the fountain of life is actually the showering of light upon the form and the movement of life. It's the new energy that we are into. Then it is atomic in its nature because it is happening before our awareness. It means it's the very field that is our existence. Not the field that we are experiencing, it is too, but since it is the very field that is our existence, it is who we are. It's not just something that then we perceive it, we use it, we apply, we don't apply, blah, blah, blah. It is the very nature of our existence. So it is a fantastic thing. All this is love, yeah? And then love has three interpretations within the three senses of the self. It is the brilliant consciousness that we are all becoming acquainted with it, and the new consciousness, which is the natural moment of love, which is the fountain of love, which is the atomic existence of everything. It's the natural moment, the natural mind, the celestial mind that we are connecting. So that's the first existence within love as the three senses of the self. Love as the three senses of the self is the brilliant mind, the consciousness. It is actually the feeling of life. Love, remember that it has the feeling of life. So what that means is the love and life are not separated. They are simultaneous, even though in the linear expression of the way we interpreted words, love is one thing and life is another thing. But in the totality of everything simultaneous, they are the same thing. So when the mind begins, oh, I see, when I'm talking about love, I'm really talking about life. When I'm talking about love, I'm really talking about the natural momentum in which I experience my life. Oh, when I'm talking about life, I'm talking about the natural energy in which I'm totally connected in uniting the universe as what it is, the universe. When I'm talking about love, I'm talking about a field of consciousness that is before anything. It is actually the atomic existence of my being. You know, I mean, my being and that are one. Then when I'm talking about love, we're talking about the brilliant nature of the mind that is not longer divided inside of the dualistic interpretation of the old paradigm. New mind, that's what the new mind is love. And then the second aspect of love is the feeling, the feeling of life. Can you imagine to feel life, to encourage and to allow yourself more and more to really understand that, oh, life is a feeling. And a feeling that is inseparable from myself. So life changes then. Oh, I think then I can understand why life is love. Yeah. And then the third aspect of love, I can say, oh, I think love is the physical existence in which I am part of the universe or totally connected to the universe. So love is physical. It is emotional and energetic because it's the feeling of life. And it's brilliant and conceptual and whole because it's the whole mind of life. So love is all there is, and all there is love. That's the reason that we said love is all there is, and all there is love, because that's the truth of all things. Yeah. And then that's the reason that we said love is love is love is love. The reason we said it 4 times is because love is love. Then love is the feeling of love. And third, love is the physical reality that is all things. And the fourth thing is the love is actually the natural momentum in which the universe is expanding into infinity. So everything is inside of a system that is constantly regenerating and also reflecting itself and revealing the very essence of every single word that we use to express the new consciousness. So it is wonderful because every single word that we use then, it allows the mind to partake of a greater field that is constantly present and constantly be giving and receiving, if you may, you want to put it in those terms, the very energy that is the fulfillment of our human lives. Can you imagine inside of a field that never is 24/7, even if we go to sleep or we become disconnected, if we go into the goonies with our mind, you can always return to the field that is ever present. You're always ready to go. But in order to return, the mind has to somehow reconnect within the field itself. It's not just a desire. It's a reconnection inside of the whole system of consciousness that gives and receives itself as love. It's called wholeness within wholeness, centralize it within the moment of life. That's what it is. Yeah. So anyway, and it is ever present. Love is ever present then, because love is the feeling of your life, which can never be separated. Love is actually the consciousness from which you experience everything. Love is the feeling from which you feel life. Love is the physical form of all existence. Love is the energy from which you are regenerating constantly as the fountain of life. Love is atomic, it's existent because it is happening before even the mind thinks about anything, and it's simultaneous with yourself as life, not as thinking, as feeling, as connecting. All that disappears, so to speak, because it's simultaneous. But then the mind understands, oh, the word that I used to before to be connected it's actually maybe redundant now because I am already. So it's one word that we don't need it as much because we are already inside. So the mind begins to partake inside of its own creative existence, which is fantastic. It's really fantastic because it allows us to experience time as in an eternal form, not as a oh, I'm fast, I'm going fast, I'm going to get there, I'm late, I do this tomorrow, blah, blah. Time becomes the actual vehicle from the whole field of consciousness that is eternity. So anyway, I went to all this word just to tell you what it will be, one word that we can go into it, or one term that we can get into it. So until and then I will need sometimes, I would like to have your idea about what do you think love is? You know what I mean? Can you see it from that perspective? Or what do you think about any single word? Like, let's see, for example, what do you think will be the knowledge of eternal time? What does it mean, the knowledge of eternal time? Yeah, so then I will ask you, and then you said, well, if you find it that when I don't know for sure, maybe you can give me a day to write it, and that would be fantastic. You write it, and then we'll look at it together, and then we see it inside of the greater mind. So the mind begins to exist inside of the field that is actually the new consciousness of life, and it's the field of eternal existence. Eternal existence is a fantastic word. Can you imagine living in eternal existence? Impossible to be sick if you are in eternal existence, right? Because eternal existence means you are regenerating every single moment. So the mind will take care of it, because the mind will take care. Oh, I see, I'm working with this computer program now, just for simplicity of words, computer program, in which the mind is taking care of all the elements and everything at the same time that it lives with life. So it's not, doesn't have to, oh, I wish that I would be better, I would like to be healed, I would like to really do this, I would like to do that. A lot of those things disappear inside of the new consciousness, because the new consciousness is the fulfillment of all of those things. Yes, so little by little, the mind, the new mind, begins to become what it always was supposed to be. The mind originally was created as consciousness. Consciousness is all there is. Remember, I'm sure you have read it. Consciousness is all there is. But then in order for us, when we seemingly separated from wholeness, we have to recreate a mind that eventually will bring us to the wholeness. So that what happened. We went to this enormous voyage that took thousands and thousands of years to create a mind, to develop a mind that it was beautiful because it took us back home, but it was very convoluted, the mind of linear time, because each of us went in another tangent. Each of us became a personality, each became a point of view, each of us became a believer of something, so created this extraordinary world that it was totally inside of a variety of things, rightly so, but at the same time, very difficult to create a cohesive one reality that we can all live in the presence of total experience instead of living in the presence of the mind. So in the linear mind, we created that reality of religion, or reality of philosophy, or the reality of politics, or the reality of not believing in anything, or the reality of me, you know, each of us were innocently imprisoned inside of our own personality, you know, like a balloon inside of ourselves, in our own mind. And then it was complex, because even though it created variety, the variety that eventually led us to the unity, it was complex because we were adding more stuff all the time. Yes, so you can see it right now, because now in this moment, the consciousness is going through an enormous tumultuous purging of many ideas, beliefs, systems, understandings, holding ideas of power, blah, blah, blah. The whole world is going through an extraordinary transmutation, because the whole world is transforming itself into its essence and becoming diverted and released from many points of view that they were never ever real. Were real inside of the evolutionary nature, because they were meant to really actually disseminate the whole variety that eventually could merge the whole into the whole, and then we can be in the new consciousness. So the whole world is an enormous, enormous divine gumbo soup that is constantly bombarding all things. But at the same time, the only way you can release the belief systems and the way that each of us human live is by really going through that, releasing it in order to become not transparent, in order to be able to allow the mind to realign inside of its new holographic imprint. And then as the mind realigns into its holographic imprint, then everything it becomes simple and fantastic and a celebration. So anyway, I wanted to tell you that, so everything was consciousness, and there was the mind that we created in order to be able to take us back home. So the mind that we created will take us back home. And the moment that it became reunited with the whole, it becomes consciousness itself. It becomes consciousness because the whole means, reuniting with the whole means that we reunited with the original imprint of wholeness that each of us carry within itself from the beginning of time. So we left the field and we coming back to the field, we're reconnected to the field, and the whole field as the evolutionary field became like a dream. That's the reason we call it a dream of time, that it was very necessary and very beautiful because it gave us an enormous amount of insights about everything, about feeling, experiences, all the civilizations, everything. You know, we created an extraordinary depth of understanding in the linear consciousness that then could really become the whole field of the new consciousness. But it didn't need to be used that way anymore. It didn't need used as a reference of many points of reference. Now it's existing inside of its own field. So it's a little bit different. So the mind sees everything, is learning to see everything from the holographic imprint of everything. So everything that you see, everything that you feel has a different feeling to you because it is awakened within you the knowledge of that thing that you always had. But we didn't know that we had it because we was always in the sort of linear process, yeah, relative process, linear and relativity in that sense. Yes, so the whole field of consciousness became the evolution of the mind, and then the mind reuniting with the whole field of consciousness, which is that we are now. The new consciousness is the union of the whole field of consciousness, and the reason that we call it new, because a part of being the union of the whole field of consciousness, this time the union of the whole field of consciousness implies the whole universe. It doesn't imply only the union of our evolutionary consciousness as human. It's a completely different program. It's as vast as the universe because it's simultaneous with all things. Excuse me. It's quantum entanglement, yes, simultaneous. So it's a completely different field. So then therefore, again, the whole consciousness manifested the mind, reunited with the consciousness. And then when it became the consciousness, we decided, or the divine, or whatever it is, we decided that the name mind will persist, will stay. So that's the reason we say the whole mind, the mind of life. We're talking about a whole mind that utilizes the system of consciousness that we have learned from the beginning as humans. But this time, the whole mind implied the same, as being the same as the consciousness that always existed and the consciousness that is being reunited as one into one field, the whole mind of life. Yeah, and the reason for it, let's stop for a second. The reason, because in the evolutionary nature, the mind was a little bit complex because it gave us total symbols all the time, and we were constantly reacting about everything without not knowing that we were reacting to a system of consciousness that it was all inclusive inside of a human experience, but it wasn't a paradigm of consciousness that interrelated with all things. It was localized only in the human experience. So that's the reason that the mind, that mind, even though it was serviceable and always sort of an assistant to us, it could never completely assist us completely, because it constantly was awakened within us reflexes and ideas and understandings and beliefs and many stories that each of us carry within ourselves. So we were always bombarded with something. You know, I told you, if you say Republican, you mean Democrat. If you say good, you say mad. If you say gay, you say stray. If you say it's good day, no, it's a terrible day. And so every single thing was dualized inside of its projection. So it created this extraordinary field. So the mind always was created to be our divine assistant, let's put it that way. But the assistant that we were serving in evolution was relative, because it could not assist us completely. Because the assistant that it was given us is based in our own personal embodiment of consciousness, and most of the time was all inside of many conflicted premises. So the mind was always trying to get us solution, but we couldn't. So the difference with the new mind is the new mind is 100% to the service of each of us. Service is not the right word, but maybe 100% to, let me see, what other word can I use? The service, because sounds like a little bit like laborious, the word service. 100% to the pleasure of each of us. You know, more than service, to the pleasure of each of us. So what that means that as we enter the new mind, the whole mind, which is consciousness reunited to consciousness. Yeah, that's the reason I explained it to you, that the difference between consciousness is always what always was. Consciousness was the field in which we were interpreting reality through evolution, from which we developed the linear mind. The linear mind that brought us to the union with consciousness again. And when we reunited with the original imprint of wholeness 30 years ago, inside of the new mind, then instead of just saying consciousness all the time, which will be very complex for our human understanding, the word whole mind, or the whole mind of life, became a way of expressing consciousness existing inside of its unity. So we have 4 different words: consciousness, the evolutionary nature of the consciousness in evolution, which it became the mind. And then when consciousness reunited to the holographic imprint of wholeness, mind stayed. And instead of being the relative mind, became the whole mind of life. And the whole mind of life was created to be totally to the pleasure of you. It means that it's like Siri, you know, Siri was created for the pleasure of us, you know. The Siri that we use in the phone, it's neutral, and it only wants to help us. He doesn't want to trick us. He doesn't have any other story. He doesn't give you any the other possibility that the one you have. It's always ready to go. He said, whatever you need to know, it's my pleasure. So the Siri that I'm talking to you about now, just the whole mind, the universal Siri, is atomic. So it's happened before you even ask for anything. It already knows before you ask what it is that you wanted to have or you desire. Your wish is my command. The famous word of Carolina, remember Carolina saying, your wish is my command? Yeah, that's what they always tell you. Hello, your wish is my command. That's what the new mind. It will give you everything, just like Bonita will tell us. You know, she felt like all of a sudden I'm freaking out, and then the mind said, no, wait a minute, somebody is coming, the lady is coming. The lady already was knowing that she didn't know perhaps that you were going in that, but she already was directed to come in that way. You already made the bet for the and the people were waiting on you for say 300 or whatever there was to give you the feel. Everything was already synchronized. Not because everybody was totally interdependent as knowledge of what was occurring, it's because the consciousness and its atomic nature, the whole mind was rearranging everything inside of a field that is corresponded to the very nature of your being. Because that's the way we were created, that when we return home, everything was given. So the reason that everything was given, because the mind will inform you of what you think you need in the moment, but then you will get it, that whatever you need is already there for you, and you will acknowledge as grace, oh, how wonderful, but then you recognize that that's the natural function of the mind. Yeah. Now, the difference is that when we understand that the natural function of the mind is to really be to the complete pleasure of your being, we are not going to take it for granted. You can't take it for granted. Oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. No, because we will always be in the presence of the grace that is the new consciousness of the whole field of consciousness traveling with existence. The new consciousness and the whole field of consciousness travel with existence. It doesn't have any duality. So it experiences itself as the grace of perfection and beauty and harmony and creation and love and God. Everything is the ultimate utopia, but not as something that we're going to get from the perspective of not being in utopia. Is utopia always existed before even we were separated from it and before we were search ourselves to find it. So the whole voyage of evolution, trying to figure out what utopia is, Shangri-La, and then all of a sudden now we are in Shangri-La and utopia. Yeah, but it's different because it is not tinted by the vision in which we will see it from the linear consciousness. Yeah, in the linear consciousness, it will be the first thing we will say if we will be in utopia. I hope we don't lose it. How am I going to keep it? Nobody will come here because it's going to disturb utopia. You know, in the linear consciousness, everything will contract to trying to keep something that you have. The new consciousness doesn't have to do that because it will have it forever, and that's the law. You know, I mean, you will experience life inside of this new existence. That utopia is already all there is, and it's complex because we only imagine it inside of being separated from. Yeah. In the evolutionary nature, we imagine all the things, the kingdom of heaven, all the things we imagine it from the separation. From the reality, those things are not the things that we imagine to be from the separation, are the reality. And the reality is much larger than the imagination inside of the separation. Because the linear mind from which we develop as humans, even though it was extraordinarily vast and beautiful and fantastic, because created the arts, created everything, at the same time, in the daily living, was kind of hokey, simplistic. You know what I mean? Our life is very simple. We eat, we get up, we go, we cut our nails, we go to the movies, we read, we make money, we work, and then we rest. We are exhausted. We come back. We're working about maybe a travel in a plane, and I go someplace, blah, blah, blah. But we were not living in the presence of the eternal voyage and the eternal celebration and the eternal resting and the eternal beauty. And, you know, so it's a different world that it is a very, it's extraordinary. And we're just beginning to understand it and coming into correspondence with it, because remember that in evolution, if somebody will tell you in the mind of evolution that we will be in utopia, they maybe tell you that it will be very boring to be in utopia, or to be all the time feeling great. It will be boring because, you know, inside of evolution, life was interpreted as having to deal with the conflicts. To be alive means that you deal with every single conflict, you get together, you do all those things. So the interpretation of being able to live in a life that is paradisical in the nature, that is creative, and is involved in many aspects of intelligence that we don't have access because of the linear. You know, intelligence and the linear is a small. I shouldn't say that because it sounds like I'm putting it down. It is inside of a system that is so innocently convoluted that it cannot have access to the totality of the spectrum of consciousness. So intelligence is the totality of the spectrum of consciousness that we have now. So because of that, it's so vast and so fantastic that we that humbly we have said, okay, I'm coming from the oldest tradition called human, that I'm part of it. And then I carry the memory within myself and all my genetical code, not only of this particular life, me born in Argentina, blah, 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 but from the creation of being human, the original design being human. Through all the incarnations of forever, transmuted itself as humans and appearing in every single civilization, always in the search for home. And now for the first time, the actual physical experience of your being is inside of the place that corresponded originally to your fulfillment. And it's now your fulfillment as it gets experienced inside of the fulfillment. Because even the word fulfillment, what does it mean, the word fulfillment? Fulfillment of what? You know what I mean? So then that would be another word that we can go when we go in the next year. We can say, well, okay, what does it mean, the word fulfillment? What do you think will be the fulfillment of your being? Because if we awaken within ourselves, the imagination of what that means really means, not just something, okay, let me see, I want to think about what it means. But if you really go inside of it, okay, the fulfillment of myself, it will become many things will surface to you. And then if you recognize at the same time that as they surface within you, you already have them, then if there were to be any work to be done, it will be to allow that energy to be able to become part of you, which it will take 1 second. You know what I mean? It's like a computer. You say yes, just click the mouse and you have it inside. And then you get to experience what that is when you put that energy inside of you, which you always have, but now it changes the color of all things. It changes the way you experience life. It changes the way you're connecting with the idea of God, everything, it's fantastic. So the mind, the new mind, or the whole mind, it was created to be able to assist you and mirror you so you can receive from that mind seemingly and from your own exuding desire to know the realization of that experience as yourself. So it is the mind that knows everything, you that you're exuding to what you need to know, and then the mirror reflection of the mind, which was created for your pleasure. It mirrors itself in the center, and you say, oh, I see. What I'm awakening within me is this particular experience, which is beautiful because it renews my original ancient self. It renews me because you get to fulfill the very thing that always existed within your being, the holographic imprint, and that you're bringing now into the surface of life. Because the bringing that into the surface of life has many functions. The main function is you. Oh, I'm appearing. And finally, I get to be all the things that I wanted to be, that I thought I may not want it to be, that I don't even know anything about it. But as I get them into my field, they feel so fantastic that I want them. And then you said, thank you very much, I'll continue. So you get to be inside of that field that you shall get fulfilled. But then, as yourself get fulfilled, as I get fulfilled, I'm creating the new world. Because the fulfillment of myself is the fulfillment of every single being in the planet. Okay? Every single being, once you understand become present in your fulfillment, feeling a little bit better. Maybe they're experiencing the whole fulfillment at the same time, or maybe they will feel a little bit better. A little bit better means that a thought awakened. Oh, I think that instead of eating this 5 pork chops today, I'm only going to eat half. Whatever. Or instead of really, I'm talking in a sort of a gross manner, but just to create that, it will become much more, the mind changes inside of its own perception of everything, and it will change the way that we were related to each other, because the new mind will not even tell you that it's bad. It will just awaken within your senses something different that you may have awakened before when we were in the linear consciousness or the relative consciousness. Yeah, relative consciousness, I don't know, it's a word again. What I mean by relative is that in the consciousness that we were in evolution, we always were divided in two possibilities. And we thought that trying to find out the center within the two possibilities will be the way that we come back home, or we unite the balance. Yeah, so that's the way we did it. That's the way we evolved for everything. So eventually what happens is that the relativity means that every time that you went crossing to one side, the relative is and the okay, this but yeah, it will always be a conversation that tried to expand the field, but the expansion of the field, it would always be relative to the conflict. Yeah, politics, for example, just to go to simple. Let's say the politics between Republicans and Democrats without taking sides. Then one side of the spectrum see it that way, the other side of the spectrum see it. So they're looking for negotiation. I give up this and I'll give you this. But then when I give you this, you give up this and I'll give you this. So everything becomes relative to the negotiation. But the negotiation never ends, because what happens that one side of the spectrum becomes larger, wanted to control the other one, and the other one to control the other one. So it became this extraordinary system that is trying constantly to get to the solution of the problem through the balance between the conflicts, the solution of the problems between the balance between the conflicts. But the problem is when the mind becomes inside of that field, it never gets to agree what is the solution in the first place. All the time gets expended into the possibilities of interchange inside of the arrangements of conflict, and we never discuss, okay, what is that we're looking for? What is that we're looking for? And that's the difference, that the new consciousness is not relative, because if I were to put it in terms of politics, it will say, okay, what we're looking for, it will be the well-being of every single being on the planet, period. Because we are unity, right? You can't say, okay, certain people are going to have well-being, certain dumb people have well-being. We have certain amount of money, some people are more intelligent, some people are less intelligent, some people deserve it, some people don't deserve it, but I don't care about them because I'm needed to find out my life. All those things will begin to disappear because, okay, we're looking at the well-being for everything. Then we said we live in, let's say we live in democracy. Okay, so democracy as the essence, it means that every single being is equal. They all have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Yeah, that's it. So you can't have any conversation about that. Oh, no, that's the democracy. But then inside of the democracy, we can't have that because certain people don't have the intelligence yet to be able to partake of that kind of a freedom, because if they do it, it's going to ruin the life of everybody else. You know, that's the story. That's the mind goes into forever and ever and ever. So it bypasses the very essence of what originally was created. Yeah. Remember that within American, when we created the Constitution, then we said when we created this beautiful thing about democracy and everybody was free, it took 150 years for many peoples to be able to liberate the slaves, because for 150 years, the slave remained the slaves. So the mind has many ideas and it knows the perfection of all things in the linear perspective, but then it thinks that innocently, it thinks that it's unrealistic. The difference in the new consciousness, the reality is setting in. Everything is the perfection of this being. Democracy is the essence of the human race, period. It's not subject to, we are all created equal because we all live simultaneously the reality of unity. We don't live at different times. The same time is one thing. It's the universal time, the real time. Yeah. So you can see how everything becomes dismantled, because the power created in the relative consciousness dissolves itself into the natural mind of existence, which it doesn't have any projection of possibility of conflict. It is the solution of all things because it is simultaneous with life. It is the solution of all things, not because it's good and it's saintly or because I love God or it's spiritual, because it is simultaneous with life. I mean, it can be any of those things as well, but it's simultaneous with life itself. And when you're simultaneous with life itself, your mind is infinite, because remember the universe is expanding into infinity as love, and then so on. And infinity and expansion means the natural ascension. We live in the world of ascension. Yeah, every single moment we are ascending with creation. It's a fantastic feeling. Can you imagine spending just a few minutes a day, just allowing yourself, okay, I'm ascending with creation. Just can you imagine? The body loves it because, oh my God, you took away all the weight that your mind, your emotions, and your physical sense is smashing me around. Everybody in the body is coming, oh my God, I'm free now. I can be myself. I can live now in the natural ascension, which means nothing other than the system that we call the body. All the elements, the pancreas, every single system is present with the moment itself. It becomes part of the greater nature of all things. Yeah, beautiful. And then, of course, the body becomes a divine vehicle because it's the house of the self. The house of the self that it can house consciousness, which is a divine form. It can house feeling, which is love, which, as you can see, is many things. And you can have the physical reality, which is the perfection of the mother. Yeah, remember in the last in the 8th Zoom, the 4 mothers. Yeah, I'm going to send you the paper soon of the 4 mothers because I would like you to read it. It's beautiful. It reflects our natural state of being as human beings. So anyway, so all this that I went into again, and I'm going to relent a little bit. All that is just to explain to you what we could do with the words and the terms, and allowing the mind to exist inside of a greater frame of reference, because the new mind is holographic. So what that means is that it encompasses all things, but also knows all things. So the knowing of all things and feels all things, encompasses all things, knows all things, and feels all things. So it is a completely different mind because it's not inside of its own continual finding the way inside of a sanity. It is sanity itself. It's actually the moment of natural perfection of our human existence. We were created to be able to experience this experience. Remember, we were a holographic imprint. There were 2 ideas that we were created as a holographic imprint. Just like the chicken got created as the chicken, and then the chicken laid the egg, and then you can have many chickens, yeah? The flowers were created as the flower, and then you can have many, many, many flowers and seeds and everything. We were created as an original creation. So then the original creation of our humanity is the new consciousness, where finally each of us, it is a mirror reflection of the creator itself. You know, that's it. We are the natural manifestation of that intelligence. And we were created to be able to be not only human, but to be universal. And then in our universality, repair every single aspect that it needs to be repaired in our human home, if you may, because we see we created a lot of stuff in our human home. The planet Earth, our mother, suffered a lot. So we got to repair it in naturally, because the intelligence will tell us, and we will all do it. And every time we repair the mother, the body feels much better. Oh, I can breathe much better. Or the liver has less. I may not need that pill now because the planet is, you know, because unity means that everything is synchronized. Yeah. But it's important to understand that the word synchronicity, the way we are understanding inside of the linear consciousness, is by an image of everything working together. Synchronicity, everything being together. Now, the experience of synchronicity is not everything working together. The experience of synchronicity is synchronicity. It's an essence word. It is the actual unity that corresponds to the unity of all things. Everything is simultaneously interrelated with everything at the same time. Everything is in a state of unity. Everything is interconnected consciously. Everything existed inside of a different field. So you can see how, you know, the way we will interpret it linearly it's good because we need many words to try to make sense of it. Synchronicity means all together now, but in reality, that's not synchronicity. That's the explanation. Yeah, the reality, synchronicity is actually life itself. Yeah, life is synchronized. Synchronicity is what we call the universe. Even though you said billions of constellations and stars and even, you know, black holes and blah, 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 forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, but it's all one system that exists in the moment, in the actual moment of existence, right here, the actual moment in which we humans live, feel, and perceive all things. So we are part of that. And remember that we as humans, when we were created, we were told, the story told us, that we were the only one aspect of nature, which sounds a little bit presumptuous, but maybe that's all, we'll find out, that we were the only ones who can trace ourselves inside of our intelligence, inside of our feeling, inside of our experience, and regain consciously our natural state of being. Everything else in nature follows its nature. It's already united as part of the whole nature. We were the only ones who will do this exquisite voyage to be able to, through experience, recover every single aspect that corresponds to our fulfillment. And then through the knowledge, experience, and feeling of that, be able to partake of eternity, which means that then we will be united to all things as a divine creation called human, which is the one who takes care of everything. Human inside of cell as humans, we're taking care of the garden, we're taking care of the mother, we're taking care of the universe. Everything becomes the management of this new system that in which the management becomes pleasure, the experience becomes ecstatic, and the actual awareness and perception of that become the revelation of its meaning as we opening within ourselves the original imprint of wholeness, the original holographic imprint of human, because remember, human, it is actually the same as God. Human, in the beginning, in certain aspects of our consciousness, the word "hu" in human, it was a word for God. Yes, which means that we get to be in that intelligence, in that perception, in that perfection, God. Yeah, in a live connection to reality. God is not an intellectual awareness of myself. It's actually the union of my life with life itself. So anyway, so this is the reason that we did all this conversation until now, was to tell you about the meanings of the word, and to tell you one meaning about the word love, for example, which was beautiful, to tell you about the difference between consciousness, as all there is forever was consciousness. Consciousness as it became mind, the mind that we evolved. Then the mind that we evolved became united to consciousness again, and the harmonic convergence, and the new consciousness came in. And then the word mind became whole mind of the whole mind of life, because it became what it always was meant to be, the actual bestower, the mind, of all the possibilities of pleasure to ourselves, to give us everything that whoever wants to give us. Yes, so God didn't create, it's not waiting for us what we want. God already gave us everything. The one that gave us everything is the mind, which now we call it the divine as well, because it's the mind now, the whole mind, that allow each of us to be able to make sense inside of our personal understanding, as to reveal the wholeness within wholeness within each of us. So each of us can begin to really experience the totality through our own sense of self, because each of us is the self. So it couldn't be a belief, it couldn't be a religion. The new consciousness could never be any of those things, because it's not geared to encourage you to enter a belief system or enter something that you have to do. Because in reality, what the new mind is about is unveiling within you the totality of yourself, which you already are. And in the totality of yourself, everything that in the past was considered to be ideas, religious beliefs, or whatever, the result then selling to your experience. And then religion becomes the moment of life. The church, it becomes the place that you are, the place, the universe, everything. We are always in church. We are always taking the Eucharist. When you're drinking a glass of wine, when you're eating something, when every single moment you are in the presence of the Eucharist or in the presence of the manna. You can call it both things. The Hindus used to call it manna. Yeah, the perfect thing that you cook and you bless it for so long in the Hindus, and then you give it, and the person experiences higher consciousness because the love that it was put into it and the desire to please that the manna or the prasad, yeah, Prasad, prasad. But in reality, in the new consciousness, everything is prasad, because everything is perfection. Yeah, everything is, now that you're going to eat things that are terrible because your mind is not going to let you. Before you even had the idea of eating, you will not have it. The idea will not be there. You will not need to choose, you know what I mean? And then if you get to choose, it will be a second, because you will see the vibrational reality of that which you're eating, and then the choice will become nothing other than your correspondence to it. You will never have to say, oh my God, do I want this or do I want that, blah, blah, blah. No, it's all systematic because you're carrying the time sequence. Yeah. So anyway, shall we take a second here? How are we doing? Are we doing good? Everything is good? Yeah, we're doing good. No, we're going. So we don't know yet. Nancy, do you have anything that you would like to add? Oh, we don't have it.
You're muted.
Action.
Okay, thank you for the dissertation on love. It was beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
It reminded me that there is this saying about, which I think would be good to add to the paper that you just put out, to have people look at it, about words. And maybe you can remember what that little saying is about, if you know the word will give you the whole world. But if you know the word is like you presented, if you know a word of unity, shows you that there are many, many aspects to the word, each word. And that is, to me, where you're going to get your whole life, because it is the whole life.
Yes.
You're actually living it in the word. Like love was a whole life, really.
Yeah.
And life would be a whole world. And many, many words, probably most words used in unity are words that have an aspect of complete holographic wholeness to it.
Yes.
Has many dimensions to it. And that was a wonderful presentation of that fact. So if we could remember that little saying, I can't come, it doesn't come to me.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
I think that it's what you're saying, that the mind is, I think that maybe we wait for a second if you need to have water or something, and then I'll take you into the graphic of consciousness, and maybe I'll show you a little bit about why the consciousness reflects inside of everything. So then you can understand how every single word, as it begins to be understood in its essence, it becomes the part of the whole scenario of consciousness that then relates to all things of consciousness. It's not just one thing. So what we're doing now together, all of us, is assisting all of us to understand the whole field of consciousness that we call it unity, or we call it unity in motion, or we call it the new consciousness of life, because it's not based on a statement. The new consciousness or unity is not a statement. Unity means there is it is understood from all the perspective of its existence, just as every single word is inside of the whole field of its essence. And then in whatever degree we're beginning to comprehend it in its totality, it allows the mind then to see it reflected in everything. So maybe beauty will not be reflected necessarily in the thing that I'm seeing. And I may see first, oh, this thing is very balanced, it is form, and it's exquisite the way that implies movement. And then, oh, I think the reason that it's beautiful, because that particular essence of geometrical harmony, it is beautiful as well. So everything is related to everything inside of unity. And what is wonderful is that the mind functions in an all-encompassing field. It's not tiny, trying to be, okay, this is just unity and this is blah, 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 blah. No, unity becomes so extraordinarily expanded that incorporate your presence inside of an infinite field. So it becomes everything. That's the reason we go through that. Yeah, beautiful. So anyway, I will take you a little bit in a second to it, to that place that I was telling you about from the perspective of consciousness, just to see it. Any questions? Shall we stay silent? Shall we just not say anything? I would like to give you a little break. Do you have any commentaries or any feelings or any words or nothing? Whatever. It's all perfect. We're together.
This is just sort of an aside, but about love, that I had a teacher once that used to say that in talking about language and the, how English was not always very easy to talk about things completely. And that, for example, in Chinese, there were 1,000 different words for love, for all different types of love,
Yes.
And I don't know whether that's literally true that there are 1,000, but there are a lot.
Very possible. Yes, absolutely. Just think about all the people, everything ultimately is love, even love to hate ultimately is love. Because it couldn't be anything else, you know what I mean? But in the illusion, hate is not a nice thing because it always trying to grab the moment and it's trying to utilize the moment instead of utilizing the moment to empower it and to love it and to bring it into the next. It holds it back into some particular projection that then actually affect the person who feels it, because the whole person fragmentalized the brain without his own or her own brain without that knowing. But they are all emotions that came out of the confusion of our linear connection in the evolutionary consciousness. But all those that will disappear. Hate eventually will disappear because it will be not unnatural for us to feel that, because it will be more fun being in the ecstasy of love than being in any form of pressure, hate. But then what will happen in the moment that they will start feeling hate, the contraction that we're feeling in ourselves, it will be painful in relation to the experience of ecstasy. Will be, I say, what am I doing? You know what I mean? You will not go there at all. And then you will not want it to stop the moment. You would like to always be with the moment, assisting everybody, because every time that you do that, you are in the presence of your whole mind. Anything that you're trying to contract, it is a double whammy. It seemingly reflects that which you are projecting, but in reality reflects that which you are receiving by the very expression of that projection. So it's a circle inside of oneself, ultimately. Yeah. So nobody will do anything as we become more awake. Nobody will do anything that will harm anybody because they wouldn't want it. Why will be? It will be disconnected from ecstasy, which will be, in ecstasy is not like having a good time. Ecstasy means that you get to be connected with the very essence of your being, which is nothing like it, but also that you get to be connected with the moment of life itself, which is, oh my God, how fantastic. You get to be connected with the moment itself as a reality. You be connected with whatever you decided, the person you love, whatever you eat, whatever you drink, whatever you see, you get to be in the presence of that. That's what it means, ecstasy, that you are no longer imprisoned inside of the mind that is shortening your reflexes into some particular interpretation that disconnects you from your divine pleasure. That's what I mean, you know. So that's what happened. So anyway, we'll take you a little bit because I wanted to show you a little bit of this. But let me see, what am I doing now? I'm going into stop sharing. No?
No,
Oh.
share screen.
Share screen.
Yeah.
Share screen. Fantastic. Share screen and share one more time. And here we are. Okay, so I just want to show you something that I want you to really spend a second with me, because it will help you to understand. This is I think the number 12 of the Zoom's presence, but this is I haven't read it, but this is the way we'll explain the whole field of consciousness. Remember that I said to you that the whole field of consciousness always existed and it will always exist, and it's a sphere, because for the mind to comprehend something, for our mind to comprehend something, it must, let me put it, well, how do I put it? It has to self-enclose it in some degree. The mind cannot comprehend you say everything is expanding, everything is infinite. I said, what you're talking about? But if you say, okay, this is sphere remind me of the infinite because of the proportion, then, oh, I see. You know, you self-enclose in order to understand the infinite. Without the self-enclosure, infinity doesn't exist, because that's the way our mind evolved. Yeah, everything had a counterbalance from which then we can understand it from 2 points of references, and then we make out our mind. Now, in the new consciousness, we don't need that anymore, but we can understand it from the whole perspective. So that's what I'm talking to you about. So let's say, for example, that for now, let's say that all these triangles, the tetrahedrons, let's say that they are 100. I think it may be 200, but I don't know. The sphere is made up of hundreds, just for example. And then when I say to you that was the field of consciousness that we always existed as consciousness as it is. And this is the way that in the planet Earth will self-enclose inside of the system of consciousness that it was called duality. This is the field from which we evolve. And then when we evolve inside of it and we created the design of mind, this is from another perspective, the way that we did it, we decided, okay, this is a tree, and this is a desert, or this is black, and this is white. We began to create differences from which we can begin to really begin to evolve in our expression of mind. And maybe in the beginning, it was just a whole idea. I don't know what the first reflex will have been. Maybe light in our human experience, maybe light, because that would be, I don't know, maybe that, but it cannot be verbalized, of course, but that would be the first thing from which you can see something else. And then through time, in the evolutionary of the species, eventually will become a plant or a tree or a fruit, or, you know, it created all this extraordinary creation. So what we did, that we created this whole scenario, and each of those points of reference became a part of a whole scenario that when it will become completed, as the story goes, it will bring us back. It will have, each of those will have their counterbalance. But each of those having their counterbalance, they're never connected to their center, because they were reflecting inside of their own polarity. They were not, even though they were searching the center, they were never came to the center. And the center only came in the moment that the whole scenario of consciousness became united, it became reflected. Actually, no, the whole scenario of consciousness became projected as the scenario of consciousness or linear consciousness. Let's put it that way. The scenario of consciousness or linear consciousness. Until the last thing, there was still not yet permeated. It was the last frame. Remember, we talk about maybe the last frame was quantum mechanics, in the quantum physics, but we don't know. But the last frame, it became the frame in which the consciousness transmutes itself from linear and sequential to holographic. So in the moment that the last frame came into existence, instead of the consciousness reflecting continuously inside of this enormous system in which everything was reflected without really connecting to its center, for the first time, the center became revealed. And the center became revealing as being the self. So the mind going completely inside of the soup of all possibilities of linear expression and sequential expression, all of a sudden, in one moment, became centralized inside of the sphere of life. And then this is what we call the self. But in the moment, we can just put it the centralization of the sphere, but that was the self. So then what happened was that in the moment that the cell came into existence, then what happened instantaneously, the internal projection of all those different polarized reflectors as it connected to the center, and the external reflection of the center out became simultaneous. So what it means is the outer form or the inner projection of concept, ideas, belief, stories, all existing inside of the dualistic expressions of our consciousness became instantaneously united in one moment and transmuted itself. So instead of everything being seen from the perspective of the enormity of the variety of the conflicts, everything was seen for the first time from the enormous variety of resolutions. Because the outside, if this is the surface of the sphere, external surface, was reflecting in, and then in the unity, the in, which is the self, reflected out. So whatever was out and whatever the out reflected in and the in reflected out, and it created the freedom within the sphere. It created the infinite connection to all things and the fountain of life. So what I wanted to clarify to you is that it's not that all the ideas and concepts that existed with the outer form relating to the center and expressing the center, but the center then changed every relationship that existed before within the form of the periphery. So I spent a second before. I mean, this is complex to understand, but it's important because in order to understand the word. So do you understand that it's not one way only? It's not out coming in, but it's the in going out. And then when it was the out coming in, it was the center of the sphere and the self. But in the moment that the self appeared, not just only the self as each of us, the self as the overall existence of the meaning of human, one, you know, one entity, the entity that we're talking to you about, that it will be eventually be able to comprehend all aspects of its nature, yeah, which each of us is as well, but we are all one. We are not individualistically separated from each other. We are all one. So the self then saw each of those reflections for the first time inside of the whole. Yeah. So let's say, for example, so are you with me with this? Yeah. It's important to understand because in unity and motion, every single movement that we do, the path of balance, is the out coming in and the in going out at the same time. That's what we practice, to synchronize all those directions, the in and the out simultaneously. So the center of our being, there is the 7 centers here, connect to the sphere of life, and we get, oh, I see, I am inside of the fountain. I am the unification of my being is the conceptual, the emotional, and the physical, because I'm inside of the fountain of life. It's simple. Ultimately, it's like the most simple thing in the world, but it's complex because it needs to be understood to be simple from the perspective of wholeness. If you're trying to understand it from the perspective of a linear, it's complex because everything is relative and the mind cannot comprehend wholeness inside of relativity. Impossible, yeah? Because the mind inside of relativity, trying to understand everything inside of a perspective that it can never give the result of wholeness. It can only give the possibility of wholeness and discuss it endlessly, but it will never can come back into it because it doesn't have the experience. It's not connected to the reality itself. only the reality itself, which is all that we are. All humanity is already here, but that's what we're talking about. Every humanity is inside of the reality of self, but most of us don't know yet because of, because the linear aspect, but each of us understand what that means. So we are the ones who brings into reality all those things, because we get to live the reality of the consciousness. The new consciousness, without us being part of it and experience, it means nothing. It's just a concept that it has no reality, because in order to have a reality, it has to be connected to the very nature of the awareness itself. Consciousness without awareness, again, is a word, does not have any meaning. Because if we have to define consciousness, it's that all there is consciousness, but then the field of awareness is what allows consciousness to be understood as the meaning of consciousness. Yeah, because otherwise consciousness, nobody knows what consciousness is forever in the beginning. People have been discussing for thousands of years about the meaning of it. So anyway, what I need to go back to it before we complete is that, let's say, for example, love. Let's put here love. That particular place is love. Okay, so that's love. And then in here we have other things: beautiful, perfection, lightness, celestial existence, consciousness, and inside of the wholeness, the new consciousness of love, infinite regeneration, foundation paradise, all of it together, in different places. And each of them has their own meaning inside of it. But love, for example, when it's here, only exists as wholeness within love, because it's part of the whole system in which consciousness reflects itself as wholeness within wholeness. Wholeness within wholeness means that from the outside in is wholeness coming into the center, and from the in out is wholeness coming to the surface. And then the unity between wholeness from inside out and wholeness from outside in reflects in the natural moment of life. And that's what the new consciousness is about. Many words to express linearly what that means. But the in, the out and the in and the out are merged into one common sphere. And that is the phrase that we use: wholeness within wholeness, centralized within the moment of life. So the new consciousness have many terms and many words. And the word love, for example, here, it is love by itself, because love is love is love is love. Yeah. Remember that I saw that love have 4 different things. Love is love because it's the mind of life. Love is love because it's the feeling of love, life itself, the feeling of life. Love is because it is the actual physical existence of the smallest molecular structure, which is the form of God. But then love is because it is, period, is. So in the new consciousness, all the words and terms that correspond to the new consciousness are the essence of its existence. They are not relative. So they're existing inside of the field that permeates inside of its wholeness within wholeness. And it gives to the person that lives inside of it a whole perspective about every single aspect, but not a perspective only about the wholeness within wholeness that exists within the new consciousness of life. It's the whole perspective of the linear consciousness that existed before the consciousness merged with its reality. That's what is the most fantastic thing. So again, it's not wholeness within wholeness because it exists inside of its own bubble of unity. It's wholeness within wholeness because it exists inside of a whole perspective of unity, but inside of that perspective of unity completely understand the totality of this field, completely understand the totality of the linear process of all ideas, thoughts, beliefs. And so it is enriched by this extraordinary voyage called evolution, because it can really actually use it as a divine expression of that completely can understand this new field. This new field can never be comprehended I'm sorry, it's the second here. This new field can never be comprehended without the other field. Yeah, because you will never know what word love is. Any single word we don't know at all. Yeah, and the field before love, let's say love is in here. Yeah, love. Let's say it's in here. We said that it was there. But just think about, for example, in the evolutionary consciousness of our human self, how long it will take for our human, if we go to the species, right? Not if we go from Genesis, because in Genesis you can see that everything was what it was in that particular moment. But then evolution, you have to start from nothing. So how long it will take the love became love? You know, the word love, that as it became in the dictionary. What was the first time they decided to put a word love in the dictionary? Which means it will have to be the time that people discover that the feeling that they have of the love of the children, or the love of a person, of the love of a tree, it had its own individual expression. And they said, okay, we're going to love. You know, so that, and then love becomes an enormously complex, because then you love the dog, you love the plant, you like your lover, you love your children, you love your house, you love everything. But then inside of evolution, very rarely we could understand that love was all there is. So we use it as sort of a spiritual definition, but we didn't understand perhaps that the reason the love it is all there is, because everything is permeated by love. Period. But so love exists as its own essential existence, because it's not a soup that is that's all consumed by its own intermingled reality. It's existed, but it also exists in every one of the components of each of the words that exist with it. So the reason is because if this is love, then the actual existence of the individual aspect of the word love, which is in essence the beginning of all things. Remember that I said to you in the beginning? Then every single aspect of all of those words are really actually permeated by that love. But if you not call it love, you may call it, I don't know, chlorophyll. The chlorophyll within the trees, you know, when you go in the tree and everything becomes green, 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 green. Oh, the light, you know, the chlorophyll. Oh, I see. The chlorophyll appearing in the grass and everything becoming so. It's actually love connecting to the light. You know, your mind said, oh, I see, that's love, you know. Not that you have to do it that way, but everything will be related inside of this field in which every single word relates to every single other word. Yeah, it will be the same as saying that the dictionary, the English dictionary, is a complete from A to Z expression of words. And that all words were created individualistically in relation to all the other words. They don't repeat their meaning, they have their own independent meaning. Yeah, and it took thousands and thousands of years to develop. And perhaps the last, maybe the last word was before the harmonic convergence, because in the next moment became the new consciousness of life. So we have a new word right now, the new term, the new consciousness of life. What does it mean? Okay, the new consciousness of life is a system of consciousness that functions inside of a specific reality, immanent reality, in which the mind, the feeling, and the physical expression of our humanity lives in the realms of unity, in which everything is perfect, divine. It has all the attributes of our fulfillment. And then I said, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. And then you can go into it. Yeah, you can assist everybody to understand what that means. In whatever degree everybody can understand what that means, they certainly are going to feel better. And every single degree is going to be better, because the system becomes permeated by the consciousness. And when it's permeated by the consciousness, it becomes perfection. Yeah, the natural perfection of its being. It's a system that it was created to be that way. Okay, so every single word within the language of unity, the emotion, and every single term has a correspondent to every single other word. And then your mind can operate inside of the system constantly, but the operation inside of a system doesn't mean there is a vacuum inside of its own existence. It is actually a system that functions, understands, renews, experience, fulfill every single interpretation that existed within the linear consciousness. Because that's the whole scenario of consciousness. The whole scenario of consciousness is not contracted inside of its own makeup. It is expanded inside of its whole existence. And its whole existence is the evolutionary consciousness as well. So that's the reason that each of us, by existing, we are assisting every single being to become conscious, to become perfect, without even having to say a word, because we are all unfolding inside of the natural release of the linear mind into the holographic mind, even if we know it or we don't know it. The difference is that if we know it, we can really actually begin to have more understanding of the beauty and perfection that we were being given by the miracle of the new consciousness. So it's beautiful, because then you can be in the presence of thankfulness. So God can really become present when you're conscious. Oh, I see. What really I thought that it was God is really actually the fulfillment of my being. I got it. Thank you very much. You know, it's not about maybe I'm going to hell or not going to hell or something. You know, it becomes the perfection of you. Everything was created for your own perfection. So anyway, all the words that we're going to talk about it, the terms, will be inside of the system. But it's important for you to understand always completely that when we are, this system encompasses this other system. This system cannot encompass that one. Impossible. Yeah? Because it cannot understand it. It only understands things in their differentiation. They cannot be understood in their unity. And you cannot make them wrong for that. How can you make it wrong to somebody that cannot understand unity? Because the consciousness, for whatever particular reason, and we know the millions of reasons, it doesn't understand that unity is a field that's ever present and ever existing, and is the fulfillment of each of us. So we cannot ever hold them accountable for that, or be upset or anything. All that we can say is just be in that present, assisted in any way we can, and eventually the field will resolve itself, because it's not subject, this new field is not subject to the approval or disapproval. It doesn't exist within the realms. So that's it. It is what it is, and there's nothing we can do about it, nothing that even wanted to do about it, because it is the blessing of our existence. Why were you trying to temper with something that is a blessed of our existence? It's impossible. Yeah. So this is the most, so the words and the terms that we are already going into is being inside of this field. And the field realigns the mind, if you may, to be able to become the perfect expression of your own fulfillment. Because remember that the new mind was created for the perfection of the experience of your being, because you, being the image and the likeness of light, the image and the likeness of God, created the mind in the first place to be able to guide you into the fulfillment of your being. That was the creation of you. We created everything. But in the time, we have to be careful about saying that, because from this perspective, from the evolutionary perspective, oh no, I'm not creating anything. Are you kidding? No, that's too much responsibility. Who am I to do that? You couldn't. Yeah, inside of here, it would be very difficult. But little by little, each of us, oh, I see. You know, it makes sense. I created this in order to make my perfection. It's beautiful, because whatever I created is going to be godlike. You will never be able to say that you created something that is detrimental to any other being, because you couldn't be in this consciousness and have that thought. Yeah, that don't go together. The consciousness, holistic consciousness of reality, doesn't go into the innocent consciousness that project things that they are not the well-being of every single being, because unity is unity is unity is unity. It has nothing to do with judgment. It has nothing to do with projection. It is just what it is. Yeah. So anyway, I think that this is to explain the meaning of the word. There's the meaning of the moment. Now, one last thing. I'm stopped because I'm in time. The moment is actually the natural, physical emotion, and mental expression of the reality of wholeness. It doesn't exist if it doesn't live in the moment, because the moment and what I call myself are one and the same thing. Yeah, they are not, it's not that I exist and the moment exists. No, the moment is actually the existence of my being. It's all one thing. So that's what it is, that everything exists within the moment, because within the human evolution of our consciousness, innocently, the moment didn't exist. So it was relative. All we pass in the future, future and past, coming and going, blah, 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 blah. So the moment, because of course, the moment came into presence in our experience, whatever the evolution. Remember that I tell you every time that we were in love, and whatever they think, oh my God, I love you forever, or I see a sunset, I am at the moment, but then the next moment I am not. I get up in the next morning, I don't know where I am, you know? So the difference between this field and this field, it is always, always, always the totality of its own beauty. Impossible. You can't get out of it. You can't come in. It's all what it is. Yeah. So anyway, I'll let you be. I only went 5 minutes more at the time. I hope that it's not too much again, but I think we did good. It's up to you. But
Beautiful,
I'm
Christian.
very pleased.
Yeah, beautiful.
I'm pleased. Yeah, absolutely. It
So if you
clarified
can
everything.
stop your share. And
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Going into first right here, and now stop my share. Stop my share. And here we are. My God, you're beautiful. All the things that I said are meaningless without you. Yes, you are we are all simultaneous with the same thing, but it's beautiful to see you inside of the actual
Christy,
physical
thank
manifestation.
you for permeating us with your love,
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you.
giving us a big shower.
Yeah, love is all there is. Carolina, you were the one who always said love is all there is and all there is love. Yeah, but now we can understand why. You know what I mean? Because we can say love is all there is and all there is love, whatever. But the reason that your mind comprehends, oh, the reason that love is all there is, because love is the essence of every single word from which we ever expressed ourselves as human.
Yeah.
You know, and therefore all there is love, because there is nothing else that is not love, because love is the actual momentum in which the universe is expanding. It's the atomic existence. So then, oh, I see, you know, it's not me that I'm saying all there is love. I'm not just a flower child, which is beautiful to be the flower child, but I am also the totality of the self that understand what it says and is what it understands. It's the word, yeah?
Yay!
All right, I love you. I love you. Have fun. Enjoy everything.
Yay.
And having a fantastic
We love you,
Easter.
Christy.
So, Christian.
Fantastic Thanksgiving is going to be fantastic.
Yay.
Because we are Thanksgiving, we are giving, and Thanksgiving is going to be great because it's about the new consciousness as well. Okay, I adore
Oh,
you.
wonderful.
Okay?
Yes.
Yes.
So,
yes.
so just a little bit of regular work to say